There is a window. In football, there is always a window, and it is smaller than you think. Most players get 5 years at the absolute top, some get 3, a handful get 10, and a very few, the rarest kind, arrive at that window and make the whole world stop, press their face against the glass and stare. But here is what nobody tells you when you are 22 years old and the crowd is chanting your name. The window does not stay open. It closes, sometimes slowly, sometimes, and this is the part that will haunt you, it slams shut overnight, and you spend the rest of your life trying to remember what the air felt like on the other side. This is the next Ronaldo. This boy is something we have never seen before. San Siro, November 2004. Adriano Leite Ribeiro collects the ball 40 yards from goal, shifts his weight onto his left foot, and hits it so hard the goalkeeper does not even move. He just watches it go. The stadium erupts. The commentator loses his mind. Adriano is 22 years old. He has just scored his 14th goal in 15 games, and Inter Milan are going to win the league. Last seen, Vila Cruzeiro, Rio de Janeiro, 2024. That is the story we are telling today. Not slow fades and graceful retirements. Not players who peaked at 32 and quietly moved to MLS for a final payday. This is the story of 10 footballers who were, without argument, among the best in the world, and then vanished completely, suddenly, in ways that still do not make sense when you try to explain them out loud. We are counting down from 10 to 1. By the time we get to number 1, you will understand something about football and about life that the highlight reels never show you. Number 10, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, February 2022, London, the Emirates Stadium. Aubameyang had been Arsenal's captain, their talisman, the man during one of the most turbulent periods in their modern history. He had worn that armband for 2 years. He had scored 49 Premier League goals in Arsenal colours. He had won the FA Cup with them. By any reasonable measure, he was their most important player. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, Arsenal stripped him of the captaincy. Mikel Arteta said there had been a disciplinary breach. He would not say what it was. Aubameyang would not say what it was. The club would not say what it was. What they did say, in the most clinical language possible, was that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang would no longer be considered for selection. He was 32 years old. He trained alone, for weeks. Here is the detail that haunts me when I go back through the timeline. Arsenal were 8th in the Premier League at Christmas 2021. Within 3 months of removing Aubameyang from the squad, they were pushing for a Champions League place. The club moved on so completely, so efficiently, that within 18 months you had to remind people he had ever been there at all. He went to Barcelona, short loan, then Chelsea, did not work, then Marseille, then further down. The journey from club captain at one of England's biggest clubs to genuine football footnote took roughly 18 months. He had it all, and then he lost it. Number 9, Mario Balotelli. Let us be precise about what Mario Balotelli was at 20 years old. He was playing for Inter Milan, one of the most demanding clubs in the league. He moved to Manchester City and scored one of the most important goals in that club's recent history, the winner against QPR that ended a 35-year title drought. Why always me? That phrase, written on a t-shirt he revealed under his jersey after a goal, became the most famous 2 seconds of his career, which tells you something, because it should have been a career defined by Champions League nights and Ballon d'Or conversations. Instead, it became defined by fireworks in the house, training ground incidents, the club that kept taking a chance on him, and the chance that kept not paying off. AC Milan, Liverpool, Nice, Marseille, Brescia, Monza, Adana Demirspor, Sion. If you read that list to somebody and told them this was the career trajectory of a man who had once been considered among the best strikers in Europe, they would not believe you. What strikes me about Balotelli is that this was never a talent problem. The talent was never in question, not once. You can pull up his training videos from any point in his career and see it. The touch, the movement, the finishing. What failed him was everything around the talent, and the game, which has very limited patience for everything that is not the talent, eventually stopped waiting. He is 34 years old as of this recording. He is still playing, somewhere, which is either inspiring or heartbreaking depending on how you look at it. Number 8, Ricardo Kaká. There is a version of this story where Kaká is the best player in the world. That version is not a fantasy. In 2007, Ricardo Izexon dos Santos later, Kaká, won the Ballon d'Or, the Champions League and the FIFA World Player of the Year award. AC Milan beat Liverpool in the final in Athens. Kaká was the architect. He was 25 years old and he moved through football with a kind of grace that made you feel like you were watching something that should not be physically possible. Then Real Madrid paid 68 million euros for him. In 2009, that was the most expensive transfer in history for 1 week until Cristiano Ronaldo arrived. And then, quietly, completely, without drama, Kaká stopped being Kaká. The injuries came. The form did not return with them. In 4 seasons at Real Madrid, he made just 47 league starts. The players around him, Ronaldo, Benzema, Ozil, were playing a game that had moved slightly faster than Kaká's knees would allow. He went back to Milan. He went to Orlando City. He retired in 2017 at 35. What is most surprising about Kaká's story is not the fall. Falls happen. What is surprising is the silence of it. No scandal, no breakdown, no controversy. He simply faded, gracefully, from the highest level of the game, as if he was allowing the sport to move on without making a scene about it. He gave interviews. He talked about his faith. He seemed genuinely at peace, which is either the most admirable thing in football or the saddest, depending on what you think a career like his deserved. I spent a long time going back through those Real Madrid years, and one detail kept nagging at me. A player of that quality spent 4 years at the biggest club in the world and left without a single moment anyone remembers. That is not a footnote. That is a tragedy written in silence. Number 7, Paul Pogba. On July 15, 2018, Paul Pogba scored France's 3rd goal in the World Cup final against Croatia. France won 4-2. Pogba was 25 years old. He was arguably the best midfielder in the world at that moment, and the future seemed to stretch out in front of him without end. 6 years later, he is banned from professional football until 2027. That sentence does not get easier to read. The anti-doping tribunal found testosterone in his system. He denied it. His brother had already been arrested in connection with an alleged extortion attempt targeting Paul, a story that involved armed men, threats, and a level of background chaos that most people will never experience in their lives. It became clear that Pogba had spent years dealing with a situation at home that had times like a man trying to play chess while somebody else was setting the board on fire. He is 32 years old. The 2018 World Cup feels like a photograph from a different lifetime. Not just his, a different version of football entirely. Here is the take that will probably get us some pushback. Pogba's failure at Manchester United was not primarily his fault. The club failed him. They paid £105 million for him, played him in a system that did not suit him, changed managers 5 times around him, and then spent 6 years blaming him for not being what they had decided he was. He had the talent. He had the desire, at least at the beginning. What he never had was a structure capable of getting the best out of him. The ban is the final chapter, but the story was broken long before that. Number 6, Ronaldinho. Here is a name that does something to football fans of a certain age. The smile, the way he looked like he was enjoying it more than anyone else on the pitch ever had or ever would. Barcelona, 2004 to 2006. I do not say this lightly. Those 2 seasons rank among the greatest individual performances in the history of the sport. He won back-to-back Ballon d'Or awards. He won the Champions League. He made Barca's football look like something designed to make the other team feel embarrassed for showing up. Real Madrid fans gave him a standing ovation at the Bernabeu in 2005. Let me say that again. Real Madrid fans, standing, applauding, the opposition, and then it stopped. The precise moment is hard to pin down, got rarer. Barca sold him to AC Milan in 2008, where he had one genuinely good season and then drifted. He played for Flamengo, Atlético Mineiro, Querétaro, Fluminense, Atlético Asunción, each club a little smaller, a little further from the spotlight. In 2020, he was arrested at the border between Brazil and Paraguay for traveling on a false passport. He spent 32 days in a Paraguayan detention center. He came out. He gave a press conference. He smiled. The smile was still there, still exactly the same. He talked about making a comeback. He never really did. One detail stuck with me. There is footage of Ronaldinho in that Paraguayan jail playing. He is obviously the best player there by about 1,000 miles. He is laughing. He is doing tricks. He looks like he he is having to work out whether that is beautiful or devastating. I still do not know. Number 5, Neymar. Professional football at the highest level in Brazil, and he is already doing things that make scouts from every major club in Europe pull out their phones to call their directors. He goes to Barcelona, is old, and the question is not whether he will win a Ballon d'Or, the question is how many. Then PSG pay €222 million for him, the most expensive transfer in football history, not by a small amount, by a staggering, almost incomprehensible amount. He goes to Paris to be the undisputed number 1, to get out of Messi's shadow, to win the World Cup and claim the title of best player on earth. What happened instead is a list of injuries so long it reads like a medical textbook. Right knee, left knee, ankle, hamstring. He spent more time in the treatment room at PSG than on the pitch. His peak years, 26, 27, 28, 29, were spent in physiotherapy suites and watching his international teammates go to major tournaments without him. The Saudi Arabia move came in 2023 and felt, to most observers, like an admission, not a next chapter but an exit. He was 31 years old. He went back to Santos in 2025, attempting a rebuild, attempting to be Neymar again, or some version of it, at 32 with a knee that had already been through more than most careers demand of a body across a full decade. Most people assume the Saudi money ruined him, but the evidence tells a different story. The injuries were happening before the Saudi move. The body was breaking down under the weight of a career that had demanded everything from it since he was a teenager. The Saudi chapter was not the cause, it was the consequence. And the Santos return, hopeful, uncertain, unlikely to produce what the Santos of 2011 produced, is either the most romantic subplot in recent football or the most painful one. Put yourself in his position for a second. You left home at 20 to become the best player on earth. You came home at 32 knowing you never quite got there. Number 4, Ronaldo Nazario, R9, the phenomenon. If you need to understand why this name belongs on this list, not as a failure, but as a vanishing, you need to understand what Ronaldo was at 19. He was at Barcelona. He scored 47 goals in his first season. 47 in one season. He was not yet 20 years old. Johan Cruyff, who built some of the most sophisticated football thinking in history, said he had never seen anything like it. He won the Ballon d'Or. He was the most dangerous major rupture in 2000, the second in 2002. He played impossibly against all medical logic. In the 2002 World Cup, Brazil won. Ronaldo scored twice in the final against Germany. He pointed at the sky. He had overcome something that would have ended most careers. It felt like the beginning of an act 2. It wasn't. The weight came. The fitness never returned to the level it had been. He played for Real Madrid for 5 years and scored remarkable goals. You can find them on YouTube. You can watch them and still feel the shock of them. But the version of Ronaldo who had played at Barcelona in 1996 was gone. That player had already vanished. What came after was a great player fighting the ghost of an extraordinary one. He retired in 2011 at 34. He now owns Cruzeiro and Valladolid. He speaks at events. He is warm and funny in interviews. He has found a different life. But here is what this tells us about the game, that we can have the greatest striker who ever lived operating at that level for approximately 3 seasons before his body filed a complaint that was never going to be overruled, and we spent those 3 seasons watching and not fully understanding what we were seeing. By the time we understood it, it was over. Number 3. Adriano, Vila Cruzeiro, a favela in the north zone of Rio de Janeiro. This is where Adriano Leite Ribeiro grew up. This is where his father, Almir, washed cars to give his son the chance to play football. And this is where Adriano, after Inter Milan, after Parma, after Flamengo, after São Paulo, after Roma, after Miami, after every club that took a chance on what he used to be, he lives approximately 200 meters from where he grew up, in a favela where he is by all accounts beloved, where people look out for him, where for the first time in a very long time, he does not have to be the emperor of San Siro, he can just be Adriano from the neighborhood. But let me tell you what he was before that, because the numbers are almost offensive in how best striker in Serie A. He was arguably the best striker in the world in 2004. Brazil picked him for the 2004 Olympic team, and he scored 8 goals in 6 games. 8 in 6 games at the Olympics. The country that produced Pelé and Ronaldo was treating this 22-year-old as the natural heir to both of them. Then his father passed away, December 2004. Almir Ribeiro, the man who had washed cars so his son could have boots, was gone, and Adriano, People who were close to him at Inter have said this publicly, was never the same person after that. Not the same player, not the same person. The drinking started, the training sessions became unreliable, the weight came, the goals stopped coming with the same regularity. Inter showed patience that most clubs would not have shown, but patience has limits. He bounced, he played for Parma, he played for Flamengo, he played for São Paulo. At every stop there were flashes, moments where you could see the player he had been, like a light coming on behind frosted glass, but the consistency was gone. The man who had been the most physically dominant striker in Europe at 22 was fighting something that had nothing to do with football. He retired, officially, in 2016. Unofficially, the career had ended years before that. He is 42 years old. He lives in Vila Cruzeiro. The people there call him Emperor, not because of what he lost, but because of where he came from. There is something in that worth sitting with. The game gave Adriano everything, and the game, the relentless, unforgiving machine of professional football, had very limited capacity to understand that what he needed was not a better training. The World Cup final, France versus Italy, extra time, Zinedine Zidane, Marco Materazzi in the chest and was sent off. France lost on penalties. He walked off that pitch, past the World Cup trophy, without looking at it. And that image, that walk, is one of the most analysed moments in sporting history. What came after was silence. Genuine, extended, almost surreal silence. He went home, he was watched. The touch, the vision, the technique, the clutch goals, stepped away from the pitch and did not come back for almost a decade. He returned as a coach. Real Madrid, he won 3 consecutive Champions Leagues. 3 consecutive. No manager in the history of the competition had done that. As a coach, he operated at the same level he had as a player, someone doing something that made everyone else look insufficient by comparison. And then, in 2021, he resigned, again, and the silence returned. France needed a manager. France went to the 2022 World Cup without him. France reached the final without him. He was not asked, or if he was asked, he said no. For 3 years, one of the best managerial minds in European football, a man who could have had any job on the continent, did nothing. Publicly anyway. Zidane is 52 years old. He has not managed since that resignation in 2021. As of this recording, he remains in that silence. The game produced him. The game consumed him. What is most surprising about Zidane is not the headbutt, or the titles, or even the silence. It is the consistency of it. He has vanished twice. Once as a player, as if he decided, at 2 separate moments in his life, that the world's attention was something he could simply choose not to need. Most people cannot do that. Most people, especially at his level, are addicted to the crowd. Zidane, apparently, is not most people. And finally, the most extraordinary case of them all. Number 1. Diego Maradona. Here is the thing about Maradona that makes him different from every other name on this list. He did not vanish once. He vanished many times. He kept coming back. And each time he came back, the gap between who he was and who he had been was wider. And each time, it somehow did not matter, because he was Maradona, and Maradona did not obey the same rules as ordinary human beings. October 30th, 1960. Lanús, Buenos Aires. He grew up in a house with no running water. He played football in the streets with a ball made of rags. By the time he was 15, he had already been identified as something different, something not quite belonging to the normal range of human ability. He went to Barcelona. He was brilliant. The world was not yet fully equipped to talk about honestly. He went to Napoli in 1984 and did something that should have been impossible. He made a club that had never won the Italian league title win it twice. Napoli, against Milan and Juventus and Inter. The hand of God. The goal of the century, both in the same game, both from the same player. The most infamous goal in football history, followed immediately by the most beautiful one. That is of footage. And then the falls began. The substance use became impossible to ignore. FIFA banned him for 15 months after the 1991 Italian League season. He came back. He played in the 1994 World Cup and then tested positive after his second game and was sent home in real time, the news breaking while the tournament was still running. He left left Argentina, he went to Cuba for treatment, he was gone, he came back, he managed clubs, he managed Argentina at the 2010 World Cup with a 4-4-2 that made very little tactical sense but was carried by the pure gravitational pull of his presence on the touchline. They lost to Germany, he was gone again, he came back, he managed in Mexico, in the Belarusian League, in small clubs in places that were a long way from Buenos Aires or Naples or the Azteca Stadium, always moving, still to be. On November 25th, 2020, Diego Armando Maradona passed away, cardiac arrest. He was 60 years old. He had been managing Gimnasia y Esgrima La Plata in the Argentine league, not the national team, not Barcelona, not any of the stages his talent had demanded, a provincial club, and the world stopped. Not because they had not seen it coming, they had seen it coming for 30 years, but because Diego Maradona's story, the boy from Lanús with a rag ball, the man who beat England with his hand and his genius on the same afternoon, the man who vanished into substances and exile and came back so many times that coming back seemed like something he could always do. His story had felt, somehow, permanent. And here is what this tells us, what all 10 of these stories tell us if you are willing to sit with them. The window is brief. The window in football, at the absolute top, is brutally, savagely brief. Adriano had perhaps 3 years at that level. Ronaldinho had 4. R9 had 3 before the first act. Pogba had 4 years spread across an 8-year career where the system never quite met the talent. Aubameyang had 18 months as the best version of himself before it slipped. Neymar had a handful of seasons at Barcelona, and then his body became his opponent. Balotelli had moments, brilliant, electric, impossible to explain moments, surrounded by everything the game could not metabolize. And Maradona had the whole story. The rise and the fall, and the comeback and the fall, and the comeback and the fall, and one more comeback and one more fall. Over and over, each time smaller, each time further from Naples, 1987. Each time still, somehow, Maradona. Football closes the window faster than any other sport. Faster than tennis, faster than athletics, because it demands everything, the body, the mind, the will, the luck, simultaneously, every 3 days, for a decade. And when one element breaks down, the others cannot carry it. The machine stops. What these 10 players had in common was not weakness. Most of them were the strongest, most gifted human beings their sport had ever produced. What they shared was the window. They had it. Briefly, brilliantly, in ways that people who were watching still talk about with something close to reverence, and then it closed. Sometimes because of injury, sometimes because of grief, sometimes because of the substances that the sport's relentless pressure drove them toward, sometimes because of systems that failed them, sometimes because of their own choices, made under a weight of expectation that most of us will never understand. Would you have made different choices? Drop that in the comments. I read every single one, and this one I genuinely want to know. The beautiful game. They called it that for a reason, but beauty is not permanent. Beauty is precisely what it is because it does not last. Which of these stories affected you the most? Adriano and his father? Maradona's endless cycle of return and ruin? Zidane walking past the trophy without looking at it? Let us know in the comments, and if you are watching this and thinking about another player who belongs on this list, tell us. Because there are more of these stories than any single video can hold. Before you go, like this video if it moved you at all, and subscribe to Goal Rivals so you never miss a story like this one. We tell these stories because they deserve to be told. And because the window for all of us is always shorter than we think.